Demon Lies Within. Um, it's truly descriptive when I say it was a labor of love. It took me 18 years to write. It's something that I came up with the original premise for in 1994, and it's gone through several iterations. I have three different versions of this book, one from 1994, one from 2000, and one from the printed version that began in 2010. So it took about 2.5 years to write and publish. So it's finally out in bookstores. It was officially released on November 13th. So now it's available for everybody to purchase and buy. And I'm really excited to have it out there and for people to start reading the story that I've been working on for so long and spent so much time putting together. So um, when I started this book way back in 1994, I had the original premise of, everybody has a novel inside of them waiting to come out. And um, that's how I wrote the original story, was somebody who wanted to move away from the hectic life of Massachusetts and move to Vermont and write a novel, because it was something he always wanted to do and a challenge he always wanted to take on. He moved up to Vermont with his family, and he had a 9-year-old son named Joshua who became possessed because they moved into a house that was 100 years old, and they moved in on the anniversary of the son's death, who was originally living in the house. So the house was haunted, and the spirit of the child who lived in the house previously possessed his child. So that's how the first story took off. And I always kept the original premise of having a 9-year-old boy named Joshua become possessed. Even through all the different iterations of the book, that was the main focus of the story, was going to be focused around a 9-year-old boy named Joshua who was possessed. And so that's how we got here. It's something that, it took a lot of time and effort in put into, but I'm really excited about having it out, having people be able to read it, being able to talk to people about the book and talk about, the story that I've written. That's really exciting for me. So I hope everybody enjoys it. I know everybody's going to love it. While it's based in the horror genre, I will say that there's a great story behind it. It's a story of Caitlin McMurray, who is my female lead character, and she overcomes a lot of adversity and tragedy and challenges and everything else that I throw at her way throughout the course of the 400 pages of this book. There's really a great story behind it. It's not just a horror story. It's a horror story with a story built in as well. So it's something that I hope all of you enjoy. It's something I know all of you will enjoy. I'm going to start off, now that I've had my little spiel, by reading the synopsis on the back cover, just so everybody can get a sort of feel for what the story's like and what the subject matter is within the story. So, as I mentioned, it is horror fiction based, and it's really detailed within the synopsis on the back cover. It starts off, "The powers of hell that lie within are very real. Following his murder, Andrew McMurray finds himself transported to the depths of hell. There he's indoctrinated as an apprentice to a demon master, Senilian. Exposing Andrew to the dark reaches of his evil powers, Senilian demonstrates a demon's ability to possess, torment, and control the thoughts and actions of the living. What is Andrew's ultimate goal following his apprenticeship? Revenge on his wife Caitlin and their 9-year-old son Joshua, both of whom he holds responsible for his murder. As Caitlin rebuilds her life following her husband's death, she meets Michael Gordon, a recent escapee from corporate America who has his own troubled, tragic past. As their relationship grows, they realize they share something more than their burgeoning love for one another. The powers of hell have deeply impacted both their pasts. Evil continues to infiltrate itself into the pair's lives, bringing with it haunting and unspeakable horrors. Andrew's plan of revenge begins to materialize once he inhabits Joshua, having him act out in often violent and disturbing ways. With possession of Joshua's mind and body complete, will hell's ultimate evil goals come to pass, or can the local priest of a small Maine town exorcise father from son? At stake, doom-laden repercussions for all involved, and perhaps the world as a whole. As I mentioned, it is, based in the horror genre. Like I said, you get that within the synopsis, but there really is a great story here. What I'm going to do now is just so that everybody can get a feel for the writing style within the book. I'm going to read a couple of pages from within. I'm going to start off with chapter 6, which in the second version of the book, which I wrote in 2000, would have been chapter 1, and I was originally thinking was going to be chapter 1 for this version. But as I started to go through the story, I realized that I needed to touch upon Andrew, Caitlin, and Joshua much earlier in the book than I would have been if I had started with Michael. So now I'm going to start with chapter 6 on page 35. So really this is my introduction for Michael Gordon to all of you. So like I said, I'll read a couple pages of it. Next stop, Porter Square. Doors open on the left. Change here for the commuter rail. The driver's voice rang through as the Red Line train pulled into the Porter Square MBTA station. The announcement shook Michael Gordon out of the momentary nothingness he had drifted into after getting on the train at Davis Square. The vast abyss of darkness his mind had entered was now destroyed. On this morning, Michael had risen during the pre-dawn hours, very early even by his standards, trying to get a head start on his workday. That's what he wanted to make himself believe, but the honest reason why he was up so early was a series of dreams he had been having over the past couple of weeks. He'd never been a dreamer until recently, but he started to experience dreams that were so vivid and true to life it was shocking to him. Michael experienced another one of those dreams, and it kept him from going back to sleep. He had been dreaming the same dream over and over the past few weeks. That he was a college professor standing in front of a classroom full of students, growing weary from his recent lack of sleep, taking a couple of pills from the bottle of Salmonex he recently purchased, but as of yet had not used. Became more appealing. For now he gave into his inability to sleep, starting his day earlier than usual. His jolt back into the real world was hastened by all the people trying to cram themselves into the train. He looked up and noticed an elderly woman, probably in her late 70s or early 80s, enter the train as one of the last people to get on. Michael looked around to see if anybody was going to give up their seat for her. "Ma'am, would you like to sit here?" Michael offered after a few moments. Yes, I would, thank you," the woman responded, somewhat surprised. This done, Michael, why should she be surprised that I offered her my seat? He asked himself. It should be a given that when a person of a certain age gets on a train, someone offers them a seat. Standing in the crowded car as the train sped away to the next stop, Hubbard Square, Michael briefly wished that he hadn't given up his place of solitude, as he was now bouncing off the other passengers as if he were a pinball bouncing off the bumpers. He'd been taking a red line train to Park Street and a green line to Copley Square for more years than he wished to remember. For the past 8 years, the subway was his mode of transportation into Boston, where he worked at Fulcrum Maynard Investments and climbed the corporate ladder to the position of senior financial analyst. This came after 5 years of relying on the train to get around the city of Boston and its outer limits. So, hopefully this gives you a little bit of introduction into my writing style, and gives you an introduction into my character, Michael Gordon, and you'll be able to get an opportunity to see what lies in front of them as you read the pages. So, at this time, if there are any questions, I can open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions? Dylan.
Which part does it have the Greek mythology?
Which part has the Greek mythology in it? It's more ancient religion, and that comes early on in the story, probably around chapter 4. Any other questions?
Why the name for the demon? Why did you get that name? Is there a story behind that, or?
Oh, for Senilian?
Yeah.
Senilian's actually a real character. He existed in the 17th century. He's an actual demon of hate. He actually possessed 2 people in France in the 17th century, and he became the demon of hate because of he possessed a father and a nun. So I took sort of his story and what information I could find about him and incorporated him as the demon master within the book, because I needed Andrew to have a mentor, a guide, and Senilian was going to be that mentor.
So since this story took a while for you to put together, some number of years, what's changed in your thinking in terms of where the story was going to go 18 years ago versus what you put into the pages 18 years later as you were finishing it up?
Actually, it's kind of funny. I have the original first draft, that was written way back in 1994. I still have it. Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, we're talking 1994. I mean, this is before the internet. Yeah, I mean, this was done on a word processor. Literally took like an hour to print 18 pages. So, I think when I wrote the first version of the story, I mean, I was 21 years old, and so this version is reliant upon. I used a lot of song lyrics when I wrote it. I had this great idea of coming up with a soundtrack to a book. Like every book would have a CD with it. Instead of a movie soundtrack, we'd have book soundtracks. So a lot of this was based on song lyrics, and that's how I got through the story. It's about 140 pages long, and it's horrible. I mean, this is atrocious. But what I did was I sort of changed. I mean, the two parents in this story, they represent where I was in my life at that time. Like the guy who's a newspaper reporter and his wife works in advertising. I was going to school for journalism, so it was something familiar that I could relate to. So I wrote about, the version that's out now. It's so much better, just because of the fact that I've had experiences in my life. I'm 18 years wiser. The invention of the internet and being able to have access to information is so much greater now than it was in 1994. I mean, if you took a look at my Google search history, it would be, I mean, between demons and exorcisms and everything that I searched for in terms of the information that I needed to look at and read to come up with, the storyline for this book. That information wasn't really accessible to us, in 1994. I mean, you have to go to a library. I mean, when we were in Northeastern, we had LexisNexis. So, I mean, that was a big data research database. So, I think it's a better book because of it. The availability of information that I had, the amount of information that I could put into the book. I think it's also, it took 18 years to write. It's a perfect time for me to drop this novel now, just because of the opportunities that I have and the reach that I can get now that I couldn't get 18 years ago. The first review for this book was written by a person in Australia who got it off of NetGalley, which is a book review site that librarians and book reviewers go to take books down and read them before the book comes out in exchange for their reviews. So a person in Australia saw the title, saw the cover, and liked it, and reviewed it, and gave it 5 stars, and put it up on his blog, and then he posted it to Facebook, and he put it on Twitter. So through all the areas of social media, I mean, his review was out there. And through that, I saw that he was connecting with people on Facebook through his review, and I connected with them as well. And it turns out the people that I connected with, one of the people owned a design and marketing firm in Michigan. So they did all the design materials, the marketing materials for the book, the posters, the bookmarks, the business cards. And through their friendship, I became friends with an author who sold, who's a best-selling author and has published 4 books. So I had her review my book, and she loved it. So she's been promoting it on social media. So the reach that this book will have is much greater now than it had 18 years ago. So between the difference in the storyline and the fact that I've been able to grow as a writer and I've developed the story much more, and the avenues that I'm able to pursue with the book and the areas that I'm able to go into with social media and getting it out there to a large audience, I think those are the two biggest differences now. 2012 version as opposed to the 1994 version.
A long way to go from the word processor of an Australian review. Huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the book literally traveled from Drake-it to Australia to Michigan, and then the author that I've become friends with lives in Arkansas.
Yeah.
So it's getting around everywhere. So it's had great reach. So like I said, social media has been a huge help for this book so far.
What about your background research? Background, what do you have to do on the demons and stuff? I mean, that must have took a long time.
I became very familiar with Wikipedia. Um, I've read a lot of stuff about demons on Wikipedia. Um, I went back and read Dante's Inferno, and um, within one of the drafts of this version of the story, I take two of my main characters through all the different levels of hell, and I walk them through it as if they were going through Dante's Inferno.
So it's parallel.
Yeah. A lot of it we cut out um, just because it slowed the story down, but we left a good chunk of it in there, and I think what we left in there really advances the story. But in terms of demons, I read a whole bunch of articles about exorcism. A long time ago, 2020 did an episode and dedicated it to exorcisms. They actually showed an exorcism on TV. So I watched it on YouTube. Um, you know, some of the demon acts that happen within the novel, I researched and watched silent movies and developed a whole um, character around murders that happen within silent movies. So I watched a silent movie on YouTube. So I mean, even with the development of YouTube, I mean that's another avenue that you have for research to be able to watch things and get information that you didn't have 10 years ago. Um, so the research was a lot easier. I wasn't confined to just libraries. I could look for something at a moment's notice, whether it was on my phone or on my computer. So, it was great help. I did a lot of research on demons. One of the things I want to talk about was, the character development within the story. Character development for any author is the key to any book because of the fact that you want to develop characters that readers can quickly identify with and take a liking to or not like them. You want to build up their stories and the information around them. And what I tried to do with my characters was to create them and make them as real as possible so that readers can identify them with them as quickly as they could and really take it, and really, reflect on them and, identify with them. So what I did was, I used my experiences in life and developed characters and based them on situations that I knew, or I even looked towards, the movies, actors and actresses of films that I'd seen to really sort of help me develop these characters. If this book ever is fortunate enough to get made into a movie, I already know what actors and actresses are going to play all of the roles. Because I look to them to help me with my character development. So hopefully as you're reading the story, you can pick up on the traits of the characters and identify with them and get a picture of them in your mind as you're going through it. Any other questions? Yes.
How did you come up with the basis of the story? Because to me, I mean, I've read the book. I don't want to give anything away, but it seems like it's really basically focused between a struggle between good and evil, which obviously is something that dates back to fairy tales and mythology and all that kind of stuff. So was that like kind of the premise of the book going in? Was it always that you wanted to have it kind of be a struggle between good and evil? Because to me, the title of the story and the whole story itself, everybody has a demon within them, whether it's your personality or things you've had to deal with in your life or an addiction problem or things like that. Everybody has a demon within them. So is the purpose of the story that it's meant to be like all encompassing for all the struggles of all the demons inside of us? Or why I mean obviously the title, but people read the book will answer the question why the title, but is it a bigger picture than just this struggle between a possessed young boy and his father and this other guy who ends up kind of solving the whole thing at the end, comes through as a hero based out of religion and that kind of stuff?
I mean, I wanted to make sure that there was a struggle there, that there was, an element of good versus evil. Because of the fact, I mean, you'd want to have conflict within any story. So I wanted to have that conflict, and I wanted to show that conflict. And I used the struggle for the soul of a 9-year-old boy to do that. I took something that, that's innocent,